Hello. This video is going to go over a few ways that I try and use my time wisely to get projects done and not go insane from overworking, although over the past year I may have done that a few times. I'm going to sort of split these into sections of DJing, producing, and then just general tips for staying on track that you can apply to basically any project. DJing is an amazingly time-consuming hobby. There are about 1 million different things that make good DJs, and the best DJs are good at quite a few of them, so if you want to be one of the best DJs, you may need to practice as many angles as you can. There's digging for new tracks and listening to those tracks until you know them like the back of your hand, and preparing them in your software if you use software with BPM and cue information, and practicing your mixing. All of these things take time. So here are a few of the things that I used to do and that I still do to try and get as much as I can out of a 24-hour day. The first one seems obvious, but it's something that I definitely see a lot of people not doing enough, especially when they're starting out, and that's listening to new music. If you know and you love a song, that's great, but hearing Railbreaker again isn't going to make you a better DJ. You already know how the song goes. One of the things that I used to do every single day is listen to all of my newest music. So usually on payday, I would go on a binge and buy all the songs that I'd saved over the last 2 weeks and put them in a cart, or gone on a 4-hour deep dive on SoundCloud and downloaded a bunch of new songs, but you don't really know those songs yet. So I would put them in a big folder on my phone called New Tunes, and I still do this, and I listened to that on shuffle every single commute to and from work, and when I was going to and from school back when I was still taking classes. An hour a day of hearing your new music on shuffle will get you familiar pretty quick, and then the next time you're on stage or you're building a set, you know exactly what song you want to play, how it goes, and how you want to work it in. I did a whole video on how I prepare my sets at some point, and a big part of how I prepare for my sets is listening to relevant music. So when I have a show coming up, I make a big folder of songs that I think I want to play at that show, fit that sort of vibe, especially if they complement the sound of the headliner if I'm on direct support, and I listen to that on loop just like I listen to the folder of new music. So this helps in quite a few ways. One is that you're more familiar with the music, so you can freestyle easier, you can be more creative with your mixing on the fly if you have ideas, but also I've gotten a lot of really good ideas for planning the set just by listening to that. You hear one song and then it shuffles into another song and you go, that sounded really cool. I wonder if those would work as a double, or I wonder if I should just mix from one into the other because I really like the breakdown of that song. You can get all of these ideas basically handed to you for free by the shuffle function on your phone if you just listen to those songs regularly. The next one is listen to your own mixes. So back when I was in college, I had a controller in my bedroom and my classes didn't start until around 11 a.m. So almost every morning I would wake up and mix freestyle in my bedroom. I would practice tricks that I saw one of my favorite DJs doing, or I would try and replicate something I'd heard, or see if I can invent a new double. I would record these sessions and then fall asleep to them that night. And then the next morning I would record another one, and then I would fall asleep to that the next night. This is useful on quite a few levels. One, it forces you to practice regularly, even if you're only doing once a week. Say Sundays, you record a new mix and then you listen to it a few times during the week. It forces you to practice because you have a routine for when and where you're going to practice. The other thing is that when you're mixing, you're only half listening. Half of your brain is focusing on, oh, what do I play next? And does this sound okay? Yeah, it does. Okay. And how do I want to translate? Oh, that's not the right BPM and I got to shift that up a little bit. And you're listening to the audio in the headphones and you're dancing a little bit. And because of all this, you have a warped perception of what your mix sounds like. Everyone does. When you listen to your own stuff as you're not mixing it, it can sound different than how it sounded when you were mixing it. I've definitely quite a few times done things that I thought sounded really cool and awesome, and then I listened back to the mixes and I realized that it didn't sound good. Maybe it was just an EQ was not right and it was clashing a bit, or maybe the layers were too messy, or the drums weren't quite lined up because I was trying to do something really complicated, so I didn't quite notice that things weren't totally beat matched. The more you listen to your own work, the more familiar you'll become with what sounds good and bad, and you'll learn more about how to fix the things that sound bad. We're going to shift to production now, and production is an entirely different animal and one that requires a whole new type of time management. First, it's endless. Projects never stop. You never finish anything, you just decide that you're done working on it. There are a ton of videos on how to finish your tracks. What I want to focus on is less technique-based and more mindset-based. One of the most important strategies that I recommend to newer producers a lot is to complete one export a month. You don't have to release it. It doesn't even necessarily have to be started in that month, but every single month on the last day of the month, you should export a song and then not touch it again. You can't go back and rework it, you can't re-release it or tweak anything. Delete the project file if you're having problems with going back and still trying to mess with it. A major problem that I find a lot of newer producers running into is that they hear projects they're working on and they hear songs from artists they love, and your own songs sound weak in comparison, which is fair. And that's how it works. Mine still sound weak compared to a lot of the artists that I really like. But then you go back and keep tweaking stuff and trying to add stuff to get your songs on their level. And it's very important that you understand this. That song is never going to get to that level. Those people have been producing for years and practicing, and their first songs did not sound as good. Their first songs probably sounded a lot like your first songs. So here's an analogy I use to try and explain this to people. If you had a group of people and you asked them to make a clay pot every single day for 6 months. You say, every day, I want you to come in, make a clay pot, leave it here, and then go home. 6 months of that, they will have made, was it 160, 170? Lots. They will have made lots of pots. If you ask a second group of people to spend 6 months making a clay pot, at the end of the 6 months, you bring both groups in and you say, show me the best pot you've made. Well, the people from group A are going to have learned so much about all the different stuff they've made, and maybe their final product isn't going to be as polished or as good as the people from group B. They're going to give you something that has a lot of experience behind it, even if it's not quite as finished, because they only have a day to work on it. The people from group B are going to show you this amazing, gorgeous, ornate pot that they spent 6 months working on, and all the intricacies, and it's very delicate and very beautiful. That's all well and good. Group B seems like it's winning, but then if you ask everyone from both groups to make you another pot, Group A is going to be able to bang something out in a day. They've done it over 150 times. They can get you something pretty good in a day, and I guarantee you if you give the people in Group A a week, they will make you something as good as it took Group B 6 months to make. If you ask the people in Group B, hey, make me a pot, it's going to take them at least a month to get something because they're not used to that kind of workflow. Don't get in the habit of taking a year to finish each song. Don't get so attached to certain ideas because you will always have more ideas. You'll always have more good ideas. And maybe there's something that you don't want to export that month. You really like it. And you can save that and come back to it and work on it later. But one thing, you need to finish one thing a month. Even if you just send it right to the trash can, you never post it, you never share it with your friends. Get used to finishing projects, because if you don't get used to ripping that Band-Aid off and calling something done, you'll never be ready to finish songs. The next thing I want to talk about is seizing the creative moment. When you're producing, if you have a good idea for a sound, start making that sound. Even if you're in the middle of cleaning up your sidechaining, or you're in the middle of working on a song that's entirely different than the idea you have for that one sound, if you get the idea, do it. Because you never know when that idea is going to come back, and if you start working on something else or try and finish what you were working on first, I guarantee you half the time, at least half the time, you will lose your good idea before you get around to it. If you're making that sound that you just had a good idea for, and you're tweaking it and it's pretty close but it doesn't sound quite right, and then you get an idea for how to use the sound for a second drop or another variation of the sound, do it. Do not spend the time trying to figure out how to make the one sound perfect when you have an idea for another sound. Make two sounds that are pretty good, and then you can tweak them both later. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've thought, oh, I'll finish EQing this and then I'll set up that idea, and then I've lost the idea and it's gone. You can always come back to those things, but your ideas are temporary and you should solidify them as soon as possible. Alternatively, you need to use your non-creative moments wisely as well. Sometimes I sit down in front of Ableton and I'm like, today's the day, I have 6 hours that I've set aside for producing, and I've got nothing. Nothing comes out, no ideas happen, or it's all garbage. And I wish I could write something good right now, but nothing's happening. That's ridiculous, because writing good music is only part of making good music. If you're out of ideas, spend some time working on drums, or cleaning up a mixdown for a song you're already working on, or exploring some of the buttons in Serum that you've never touched before. You'll find that half the time you'll get a good idea just from messing with something else. Something will come to you. And even if it doesn't, the other half of the time, you've gotten some busy work done that needed to happen eventually anyway, so you haven't wasted your 6 hours. You've still worked. If you can't think of any good patterns, try working on exclusively sound design. Save some of the sounds and make your own sample pack. And then later, if you have some pattern ideas, you don't have to sit there fiddling around making a sound. You can just grab some samples that you made earlier and whip that into the pattern before your idea goes away. For these exact reasons, I have quite a few energy drinks in my fridge over there because there have been many nights where I've had a really good idea and it's been late, but I don't want to let go of it. So I grab a drink, I start drinking it, and I really get to work on, okay, I have an hour, maybe an hour and a half until this wears off. What can I get done and what can I squeeze out of this good idea? Because if I go to sleep, it's gone. I find multitasking extremely helpful for me when I'm not being productive. At a given time, I have around 20 songs that I'm working on in various stages of completion, maybe more. Some of them are just an 8-bar loop, and some of them are, this is almost done, but I just need to check the master one more time to make sure it's perfect. If I'm not making any progress on a song, I'll go into the folder and find a random song, ideally in a completely different style or genre, and I'll open that project file. And the change of scenery can really help to spur new ideas. If you're making a dubstep tune and you're like, it's just not sounding right for me, open a house project or start a house project, and whatever wasn't working, try and put that same idea into a different style, and maybe it'll work for that. And even if it doesn't, maybe it'll give you an idea for something that'll work for that. I do something called going dark. Going dark is when I turn off the internet from my computer. I literally unplug the Ethernet from the back of my computer. I set a timer on my phone and set my phone across the room. I tell my roommates that I'm working and not to bother me unless it's really important. My phone's still on in case somebody calls me or there's an emergency, but other than that, I'm completely disconnected. This allows me to really get into the groove of what I'm doing and attempt to lose track of time while I'm working. It can pose some interesting challenges, like if I want to find a sample for something, I can't just go get it because I'm not connected to the internet. I have to work with what I have, but that comes up with some really creative results a lot of the time. I have a few general time management tips that help with any sort of project, and the biggest one for me is little timers on my phone background. So I have a lot of countdowns up on my phone homepage that just allows me to see every time I open my phone what's coming up and how much time I have to get to it. So every show that's coming up that I need to prepare a set for, every release that I need to be promoting, every other project I have is met with a little note on my phone that I see gently reminding me, hey, you've got some work to do. Taking time off is also incredibly important. If you don't take any time away from working, you will burn out and you will not actually complete the thing that you're trying to work on. It does sound counterintuitive to be more efficient by doing less, but a few hours a day, taking time away, or even a few days away is amazing for refreshing your creativity and drive. And every time I do, I come back with new and better ideas. Sometimes it's as simple as just running to the store and back, or going for a walk, or sometimes I don't touch Ableton or Rekordbox or anything for a week. But when I do return, I have a lot of ideas for what I want to do and how I want to approach it. It's not worth slamming your head into the wall trying to get things done. I prefer to try and work smarter, not harder, and figure out what I can do with the time that I have to get a step ahead. So every second of every day is an opportunity to move forward in something. And even if it's not moving forward in music, you need to be moving forward in something. You know, we all need things like financial stability. Going to work isn't a waste of your time because you're going to work to build a career that can make you money so you can pay your rent and have a place to do your music. Don't see that as non-productive time. See that as time that you're indirectly working towards the same goal, and figure out if it's possible to use some of that time in favor of your direct goal as well. Well, I hope you got some idea of a way that you can use your time a little more creatively and wisely to get a little bit more done. I know that this isn't necessarily as relatable to everyone right now because of the lockdowns, but as we get back to normal life, I think a lot of this will become very, very useful for some people in terms of how they can spend their day when they're not at home still working on their music. If you have any questions for me or any comments on anything, feel free to reach out to me. You can use the comments, you can use social media, you can use whatever you like.